Well, hello, Witchilings. It sure has been a while. I have an announcement to make today, and that is that I found out that I'm bipolar, and I'm going to talk all about it. So I'm bipolar, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I found out, what it felt like as a kid to have bipolar, what bipolar feels like to me today, what it's like to practice as a bipolar practitioner, and some resources to reach out for help. So let's get started. In order to talk about bipolar, I need to talk about my recent work with my therapist. Originally, I was diagnosed as generalized anxiety disorder by my general practitioner doctor, so just my GP. And because of my diagnosis, I wanted to seek therapy because I felt like medication wasn't enough and it just wasn't doing it for me. So I started by taking some medications in my younger ages that did not work very well for me at all. And then eventually I found one that I really like, and I had been taking it, and it started to just not feel right. So I would feel amazing a couple weeks after I'd start taking my meds. So I would feel the same for about 1 to 2 weeks. And then once about a month hit and they were kicking in, I would feel amazing. I'd go to my doctor checkup and say, everything is fantastic. My life is amazing. I'm able to do artwork nonstop. I can just keep working. I'm not sleeping all the time. Come to find out, a lot of times when you switch your meds and you're bipolar, it kicks you into mania. So let's talk about mania and depression. Mania and depression are things that hit you where you feel really elated, really high energy. It's almost like you've been drugged. At least for me, it's almost like I've been drugged. And then depression is that balance afterwards that brings you back down from that high, but it feels like crap, and it's a real, honest depression. And it happens to me repeatedly a few times a year. Having this happen to me over and over again, I kept on thinking my meds were wrong until eventually I was fed up. I told my doctor I wanted a referral. I wanted to see somebody who was more skilled to help me because something wasn't right. So my doctor was amazing and brought in some social workers. If you have social workers in your area, I would highly recommend reaching out to see if they have any recommendations for you. The social worker gave me some recommendations for psychologists in my area. So I got signed up to see a psychologist. And on the very first meeting, after hardly knowing me at all, she knew right away I was bipolar. And I was honestly thrilled because I've been begging for answers my whole life. When I was 12 years old, I asked my dad, what's wrong with me? About the same age, I had a friend who was bipolar, and I was like, I feel the same way you do. I have always attracted bipolar people and really identified with them, and a lot of my friends ended up being bipolar over the years. So there was kind of always a suspicion that maybe there was something off with me. Was it borderline personality disorder? One of my coworkers thought that I was before. I wondered if it was bipolar, but I thought there's no way that I would be that different, that my brain is functioning that much differently than others. Turns out it was. And now I've been medicated for my bipolar. I'm on a mood stabilizer and things are going so much better. My highs aren't as high and my lows still haven't hit yet. I've been able to stay like low manic, which is hypomania. I don't believe that I've gone into full mania because I've never been hospitalized for how high of an elevated mood I am. Now there are things in magical practice that seem like mania sometimes. So I do have a direct connection with my deities, my entities, and my gods that I work with. I talk with them like they're here. Sometimes I can see them walking through my house like shadows. I can go to the astral, I can go to their realms, and I can talk with them in person. And honestly, what's more grandiose than saying that you have direct line access to God? It makes it difficult to know if it's my symptoms or if I honestly do have this connection. And I'll tell you, it always feels real. The reason I think that this is real connection is it happens when I'm manic, when I'm depressed, and when I'm in between. So I'm pretty sure that my connection to God is not just a symptom of my bipolar, because it's consistent no matter what state I'm in. So when I was a kid, I remember hitting a huge mania, like I said, when I was about 12. My interests were just so intense. It's like digging at my soul. It's just so incredibly necessary. And then I would go into deep blahs where I could hardly talk to people. It's like Even communicating with my best friends was just the biggest task. I couldn't even open my mouth or stand up. My parents always thought that I had hypothyroidism, and that's where your thyroid doesn't produce enough of its chemicals, and you feel very tired a lot of the times. Well, I was, but it was something in my brain. It wasn't in my thyroid. So my symptoms were ignored, and they just got worse progressively until I was in my 20s and I hit one of those darkest of dark lows. I asked for help and it wasn't very helpful. But in the last few years, reaching out for help has made the difference in the world. As far as practice goes with being bipolar, I will say my co-magician, one of my dragons that I work with very regularly, when I'm manic, she will spit out as many spells as I can possibly handle. She is willing to go nonstop with me. And the reason for that is she knows that I'm gonna hit a low and I won't be able to do practice at all. So in those times that I'm gonna be in my low lows, there's spells that I'm gonna need to know how to do. There's different sigils that I'm gonna need available to me, and I just will not have the energy to work them out and figure them out. She'll let me just go crazy and do all the spells all at once because she'll be there for me when I crash. Now let's talk a little bit about what bipolar disorder feels like for me. I'm not an expert on bipolar disorder, but I'm trying my best to be an expert on my personal bipolar disorder. And that's something that I've really taken by the reins and been working my ass off on. I've been trying really, really hard to work on my own bipolar disorder and to really get it in control and be the person that is the most Melangle me that I can be with bipolar disorder. So how that feels is when I am manic, it feels like I'm on my game. It feels like I'm the most me that I can be. And a lot of times it's really dissatisfying to be anything but manic. It's almost like my body creates its own meth, and for better terms. And basically I can do so much and I can work so hard nonstop. And most of it is good work until I get into actual mania as opposed to hypomania. So hypomania is a lesser version of full mania. And full mania is thinking that you are in connection with and are God, which, I mean, I think about that kind of stuff sometimes when I'm manic. It's not out of the realm of possibility. But when I get hypomanic, I come up with some really good ideas and I can work my ass off at them. But a coping mechanism I've had my entire life is to only do a project that I'm able to complete within the course of one weekend. Because I know that I don't have the commitment, I thought, to finish a project that I started. Well, what I'm knowing now is that the reason I couldn't finish it is because I was bipolar. And whenever I was working on those projects so hard, the reason that I was able to work on them so hard and just not stop was because I was hypomanic when I was working on them. So there's been a lot of times when I've tried to start small businesses, and I'm doing it again. But there's a lot of times I would start and I would fail and I would just beat myself up about it because I would think there's something wrong with me. Well, there was. I didn't have my treatment. I wasn't being medicated and I wasn't taking bipolar by control and making it something that I'm in charge of, more so than it being in charge of me. When I'm depressed, it feels like everyone else's depressions. It's no lesser. It feels the exact same way. So thoughts of personal harm or anything that puts myself down are very common. Things that put me down are pretty common thoughts that I have. I do have a lot of repeat thoughts. So thinking I'm not enough over and over and over are things that I catch myself doing more when I'm being depressed than I do other times. There are some times in my life where that'll happen. I'll just have repeat thoughts in my head like other people do, but it's really more common when I'm depressed. I tend to sleep a little bit more when I'm depressed, or I want to sleep more. It isn't easier to go to sleep though. I do tend to have a lot more anxiety symptoms when I am depressed, and a lot more of my triggers for things other than PTSD triggers. Those ones are consistent throughout all of my life, through all of my bipolar selves and normal self. When I'm switching from depressed to mania, it can feel really good. It feels like I'm finally broke it. I'm breaking free from my depression. That's really nice and fun. But when I'm going from mania back down to depression, I have a lot of self-consciousness. I get really concerned about how silly I was when I was hypomanic or manic. I feel really guilty. I feel really bad about how I behaved. But knowing now that I'm bipolar, it helps me know that that was just a mania symptom, and my family members and loved ones, my friends, they can help me identify that that's a thought that I'm having, or I love that you're having such an exciting idea, but I think this one might be a manic one. Just being kind to me about it and understanding helps me not to feel so embarrassed, because there's a reason for it. I'm not just uncontrolled lunatic. Sometimes it feels that way, but things are definitely better now that I know. If you guys have more curiosities about Magick with bipolar, I could definitely go into a series about how different aspects of my magical practice are affected by my bipolar disorder. I think as I practice more with knowing that I'm bipolar, I'll probably have more and more ideas too. So if you're bipolar and you're a practicing witch or magic practitioner or wizard, then let me know if you'd like to hear more about this. If hearing about how bipolar practice works for you, definitely comment and let me know. Or you can also email me. You can check in my description of my channel for my email address. I feel like I have a really easy connection with the other side, and I don't know if that's because of bipolar or of anything else it could possibly be in my life. I talk a lot about my magical practice, but I think it would be nice to talk more about how bipolar is interacting with, hindering, and influencing in a positive way my magical practice. Let me know if it has changed your practice too, if you also have bipolar disorder. Now, how to ask for help. If you have a general practitioner doctor, I would definitely reach out to them. They'll be your best resource to ask for a therapist recommendation. Make sure that you have somebody who can medicate in case that is necessary. Also, to be a good person to host that information so you can share it with other medical practitioners. You can talk to a social worker in your area. Usually if you look up your county, if you're in the United States, if you look up your county online and look for addiction and mental health resources near you, you'll find some pretty good resources, and there's even a phone number you can call that can direct you to resources near you. I'm going to place the phone number down here because I do not have it memorized. So check out that number if you're in the United States, and if you're in a different country and you want to share a resource, please do share down below. If you're with a general practitioner that's prescribing you medication and you're with a psychologist and you feel like things just aren't quite right, please speak up. If things are ever not right in your therapy, it's a business relationship. It might feel a lot deeper than that, but in the end, you're paying for the service, or you're asking for this service to take your time and help you out. And if you're not getting the help, then you need to speak out, and your therapist will absolutely understand. And if they don't, they're not really a therapist. They're kind of just a dick. Your therapist may even be able to recommend people that would be better for you. Like, they might work with a psychologist that can look at your mental health and also prescribe the appropriate medication. A psychologist can not only talk to you about your mental health, but they can also prescribe the correct medication, which they've had years and years of training on, specifically for your brain, to make sure that your brain is properly treated and that you're listened to in the right way and prescribed what is necessary for those thoughts. Your general doctor is going to be a good way to get started, but I definitely talk to a therapist or a psychologist if you can. If you don't have enough money for a therapist, I recently found out that a lot of psychology offices have a discounted service available that can be pretty dang cheap. I found out about it from one of my friends. His name is Drew, if you're watching. Hey Drew, I'm telling everybody about your awesome recommendation. The recommendation is call a psychologist or your local school that teaches psychology. See if they have any student counselors. A lot of times they're really inexpensive. This is something that I started doing when I left my job, which I'll save for another video. I switched from a trained, fully licensed therapist, and I started going to somebody who is in school and not quite licensed, but is in the end of their term. So far, my therapist has been pretty awesome, and it was only $25 a session. My friend Drew, his are 5 free sessions and $5 a session afterwards. If you don't think that there's therapy available for you, check something like this out because you might be able to afford it. I've also tried websites like BetterHelp, and I didn't really love it, but I didn't really give it that much of a chance. If you've had luck with resources like this, totally comment down below and let everyone else know. I'm also going to give some resources if you don't want to reach out at all and you just feel like laying in bed. You can totally watch some YouTube videos of some people that really help me personally. Now, these aren't your psychologist or your therapist, but they are psychologists and therapists. So I think their advice is quite nice, but don't take their advice over your own. If you have some advice you've heard in these videos that you'd like to try out, talk to your psychologist or therapist and see if they'd work for you. First is Dr. Tracey Marks. She's a psychologist and she has some really amazing videos on bipolar disorder, as well as awesome ideas about making sure that you have good coping skills for any mental illness that you might be struggling with, or just mental difficulties that you have. If you're neuronormative. Who's neuronormative? The next one I'd like to talk about is a psychologist. Her name is Kati Morton. Kati Morton gives some amazing ideas to get your own cognitive behavioral therapy going at home. She talks a lot about journaling, making sure that you have good methods of grounding, good coping skills, and a good toolbox of ideas to help you when you're having a hard time. I definitely recommend checking out some of her videos. She also has amazing videos on bipolar disorder that I thought were really helpful too. Finally, my favorite video series about helping with bipolar disorder is the Bipolar Warrior. The Bipolar Warrior is not trained to my knowledge. If you are trained, let me know, I guess. Hi, if you're watching. I love your videos. So the reason I love his videos is that he personally has type 1 bipolar disorder and has gone through a hell of a lot to become really awesome at managing it and teaching others how to manage it as well. His videos have helped me a ton with amazing ideas about how to ground, ideas about how to tell my family members about my bipolar disorder, ideas about how they can help me and how I can help be a better person around my family with bipolar disorder. One of my favorite grounding ideas that I tried from him was ABCs, and you can try this with pretty much anything. So if you're having a bad day, you're feeling really negative, his idea was ABCs of positive thought. So you start with A could be applauded. A could be absolutely happy. It doesn't have to be perfect. B could be benevolent. It could be boisterous. C can be confident. You just try to list as many letters you can of the same letter until you're starting to feel better. It's really good for me if I'm having a panic attack or anxiety attack, because I can go through different things like, what are all the foods that I can think of that start with the letter A? What are all the colors I can think of that start with the letter Z? None. It's okay to skip a letter if you don't know. So, are there Z letters? Are there any colors that start with the letter Z? Probably. Let me know. And those are some of my favorite YouTubers. I hope you guys check them out. And if you have any interest in me talking about my personal experiences, be sure to let me know. And also, if you comment, like, and subscribe on this video, I'll see that and probably make more like it, because I'm thinking I'm going to start more videos. Thank you, Witchlings, for watching my video about my bipolar disorder. I love you. I'll see you much sooner than last time. Bye. Blessed be.